With the new format upon us, time to take a look at some of the best decks from over the weekend. Today we're talking about some of the best decks from over the weekend. So I'm going to do this in a little bit of a different style. If you guys like this style, let me know by clicking that like, clicking that subscribe button, of course. But I think context is important. I plan on doing a video at some point. I have it already mapped out. I just have to shoot it. Talking about what to look for in deck profile videos because they're not all the same, right? So when we look at these deck profiles, I just wanted to give context of what we're talking about, right? So I wanted to showcase how many players went to these regionals, these world championship qualifiers, because they're not all the same, right? You have Las Vegas YCS had 1,100 players. That's a lot. But you do have to understand it was also a team event, right? So there's really about, I think if the math checks out, it's about 300, 400 teams there, somewhere between those numbers there. Which is a good amount, right? So there were more teams there than there were players at the Pennsylvania WCQ, right? But 220 is a pretty solid amount. Even 50 and 61, that's not terrible. But 50 players, if you go to a big OTS store during a big set release and they'll do like a set tournament, I know for a fact that my region where I'm at, we don't have a lot of big tournaments ever. I don't even know if my state has. I live in Michigan. I don't even know if my state has tournaments. I know Detroit will sometimes have some, but I'm on the other side of the state, right? So we never get really big tournaments for locals, and we usually hit about 50 to 60, right? So it's just something to keep in mind. We're just gonna start with the small one first, which is the Debrecen WCQ. This was the winner. This was the Evil Twin Runic Sprite deck profile. That was the interesting thing of like, what is going to be the best version of Sprite, right? Because you no longer have Sprite Elf. I don't know why it took me a second. We no longer have Sprite Elf, obviously. So the question of where does Sprite go from here? Evil Twin and Runic were definitely decks that got thought of. I don't know if the mixture had gotten thought of before, but this deck was piloted by Sambor Havasi. Sorry if I butchered that name. Context sees the picture. That's interesting. This is the first place WCQ deck profile. So 3 copies of Lava Golem. Only 1 Ash Blossom and Joy Springs. I wonder if that's a cross-out target. I'm not sure what the 1 of Ashes. You want to see sometimes, but not all the time, I guess. 2 copies of Live Twin Lila. 1 copy, of Live Twin Kilskifrost. 1 copy of Live Twin Kilski. 3 Sprite, 3 Jet, 2 Carrot, 2 Red. Pretty standard Sprite package. We're also seeing the 3 starters, 1 Spring Smashers, excuse me. I don't despise it. I think this is the correct ratio. I'm not 100% sure if the ratio is correct for Runic, but it looks correct just looking at it here. I think they usually run 3 fountains, but I'm not 100% sure. I'm not sure about this Live Twin package, but usually the Evil Twins are usually more used for their extract monsters, not really their main deck monsters. But for the Runic stuff, we got 1 Runic Dispelling, 1 Runic Smiting Storm, 2 fountains, like I mentioned already, 3 Freezing Curses, 3 Runic Tips, 1 Triple Tactics Talent, 3 Slumbers, Runic Slumbers, 3 Flashing Fires, and 3 Runic Destruction. So a pretty standard looking deck profile, but let's take a look at the extra deck real quick. Only running level or link 2 monsters, other than, of course, the Evil Twin boss monster. 1 copy of Trouble Sunny, 2 copies of Lila, 2 copies of Kilskia, 3 copies of Runic Wings, 1 copy of Runic Fangs, and then, of course, 2 Gigantic Sprite, 2 Sprints, or 1 Sprint, excuse me, 1 Soul Sweeper, 1 number 65 Gin Buster, because we can make it in 1 number 29. Not anything like, if someone were to tell me that someone was main decking Lava Golem in an Evil Twin Runic Sprite deck, this is kind of what I would picture, right? I don't really 100% understand the idea behind the 1 Ash and the 1 Triple Tactics Talent, mostly because those are the 2 cards that make it a 42 card deck. So you're losing consistency, and I don't know if Ash and triple tact, one Ash and one triple tactics talent. Like I actually think, and you know, give credit where credit's due. Havasi got first place at a WCQ regional. I didn't. Right, so take what I'm about to say with a grain of salt. Right, I always try to say that when I go over other people's deck profiles, but I'm not just gonna look at a deck and go, that looks great, on to the next one. I would like to give my opinion. I personally think that another Ash and another Triple Tactics talent would be better. Like you're already sacrificing consistency going above the 40 card mark. So why not sacrifice a little bit more just to get more consistency on seeing Ash Blossom and Triple Tactics talent, because they are pretty powerful cards if you can resolve them. But just seeing them at one, it just feels like a lot of times you might end up in a situation where, man, I really wish I would have seen it. Unless they're searchable, right? We haven't taken a look at the side deck. I guess we can look at the side deck real quick. So no cross out on the side, but we do see one Resonator, one red Resonator for time, one Chaos Hunter, the remaining copies of Ash Blossom and Joy Springs. Okay, that makes sense. 3 Contact C, 3 Nibiru's, 2 Cosmic, 1 Harpies, and 2 Evenly Matched. So this makes more sense, because we do see a lot of times that Triple Tactics talent as just a one of, just in case you do see it. It makes sense. So you're running the 3 Ash on the side, so it is really just more for consistency. They probably play tested with 3 Ash in the main. Probably didn't love it. Probably cut it down at 2. Probably then cut it down to 1. So I feel like, okay, now seeing the side deck with the Ashes, it's all kind of coming together. But for those who don't know, this is kind of like a different card. But when your opponent normal special summons a monster, you can special summon this card from your hand to your opponent's side of the field in defense position. This card the card's controller cannot fusion summon, Xyz, or the link summon unless they use this card as material. So what's interesting is that since this is a level 6 monster, right? We look at like Branded. Branded could probably use this deck. I don't know. I can't really think of the monster that they would use it for though. Off the top of my head, like Guardian Chimera, obviously, and there's others that are really simple. But like when we look at Kashtira obviously is the best deck right in the room. So they summon out the Fenrir real quick, trying to break our board. We give him a Contact C. What are they going to do with the Contact C? Because most Kashtira deck, we'll probably look at a couple of Kashtira deck profiles, just because it's a new format. They can't get rid of this card. And odds are they're going to have to do the Ibly thing where they switch it to attack position. What's also interesting is that B-Troopers can search, the Resident Insect specifically can search this. Nibiru is also really high impactful. I really, really like this side deck. Really, really big fan of the side deck. No quarrels with it at all. Really like this deck. You look at this deck, and I feel like the Ash and the Triple Tactics talent thing is nitpicking. Like, this is a really, really well-made deck. And you get to tell it's like not a coincidence that this deck got first place at the the Debrecen WCQ. So shout out to Havasi. The next one we'll look at is the Hamburg. This was actually the winner of this WCQ was actually Din Kong Pham. He actually has his own YouTube channel, so make sure you go and check that out. This was his deck profile. Lithium posted it to the Twitter. I don't want to dive too deep into it because it's Sprite, obviously, but there's some goo. I don't even actually know how they summon this card, so I'm definitely going to be watching the video for that. But I want to take a look at this. Theron Punk. Punk has been interesting. I think it kind of disappeared from the meta for a little bit because it just couldn't compete with Tier, and it couldn't really run the stun cards to help it compete with Tier. But this is interesting, as this was piloted by Stevens. I'm not sure. 40 card main deck, I love to see it. And they are running 3 copies of No Punk Zeamin, 1 copy of Sharakusari, 1 copy of Madam Spider, 1 copy of Wagon, 2 copies of Deer Note, 2 copies of Foxy Tune, 3 copies of Foxy Tune, 3 copies of Ogre Dance, 1 Theron King Regulus, 1 Lily. So it's like really Theron, 1 Empress, and 1 Duke, and that's interesting. And then we actually also take a look at Bull. So what's interesting about this is that all of the Theron cards have the Regulus's effect, where they can target a Theron monster or a monster of their type, special summon themselves, and if they do, equip that card. And then they all have a secondary effect. So this secondary effect says that you can send 1 card from your hand or field, add a Theron spell or trap. This one, you could discard 1 card, target a Theron monster in your graveyard, or in your special spell and trap zone, special summon it. So like the Inzektor type effect there. While you control an equipped card, Therion monsters cannot be destroyed by card effects. Pretty good. A Therion monster equipped with this card gains 700. Oh, I didn't notice they have a third effect. You can target a Therion card you control, one card your opponent controls, destroy them. That's not a quick effect, unfortunately, but it's still pretty solid. I just noticed they all have a third effect. Do you all just say the 700 attack thing? Yeah, they do. So they all have that third effect where a Therion monster equipped with this card gains 700 attack, also can activate the second effect listed as if it were that card. So essentially, you can activate Regulus, send Regulus, summon out another Therion card, bring back Regulus, and now that Therion card, like let's say it's Duke, for example, it has a Regulus, so now their Therion cards, monsters, cannot be destroyed by opponent's card effects. Also, it has the essentially the Omni negation where we can send Regulus and get the not Omni negation but the monster effect negation, right? And then you throw in the Punk package in here, allows you to do a lot of very interesting things, right? The Punk package, just because of different levels, because they are psychic, you can do a lot of, and there's tuners obviously, there's a lot of really cool things you can do. 3 copies of Nib, 3 copies of Ash, the 1 Ghost Ogre and Snow Rabbit, 3 copies of Emergency Teleport, 1 Change of Heart, 3 Book of Eclipse main decked again. That might just be what you have to do. You might just have to main deck Book of Eclipse in this format, but it is what it is. 1 copy of the Field Spell for Therion. I did not mean to click on it, but here we go. Therion did close. I'm not really going over the Punk cards because I feel like you might know the Punk cards already. Where the Therion cards aren't as popular. I mean, obviously Regulus is Regulus, but they're not as popular, so that's why I was going over those. 1 copy of Jam Session. Surprised there's no set rotation, but I guess you don't want to give your opponent the Punk card. I don't know. Endless Engine Argeo System, and then 1 copy of Punk Dangerous Gabu. 3 imperms, right? So it's a pretty stun spam heavy deck, and that you definitely need to be on the lookout for. It's a real solid archetype here. 1 copy of Psychic End Punisher. Your opponents, while your life points are equal to or lower to your opponents, this synchronous is unaffected. Once per turn, you can pay 1,000. Target a monster you control. 1 card your opponent controls. Banish them. You can make this card gain attack equal to the difference. That's a really good card. Just straight up. 1 copy of the Menacing Mantis. 1 copy of Baron de Fleur. 1 copy of Punk Amazing Dragon. 1 copy of Jam Dragon Drive. 1 copy of Rising Carp. Double Zeus. 1 copy of the Springens level rank 8. 1 copy of Felgrand. It's a good card. It's a really good card. Like, during either player's turn, you can detach a trigger for this card, target a face-up monster on the field. Its effects are negated, but it's unaffected by other card effects. So it's a really solid form of protection, as well as a form of disruption, right? It's a very interesting card. Didn't expect to see it. 1 copy of Hope Harbinger, 1 copy of Melee of the Trees, 1 IP Masquerena, Nightmare Unicorn, and Apollosa, obviously, as well. Gammas, because we can summon it with E-Tally, and it's also just a decent card. 1 Driver for the Gammas, 2 Dark Hole, 1 Cosmic, 1 Harpies, 3 Evenly, 3 Anti-Spell, and then the Therion Stand-Up. It's pretty solid. So an interesting, very unique deck profile, but I love to see these type of deck profiles. And if we're being honest, a 61-person regional, these are the type of decks that can get top 4, right? And there's nothing wrong with that. Like, it's not like this deck is bad. I'm not trying to say that this deck is bad. I'm just saying, like, if this deck was at, let's say the Pennsylvania WCQ, maybe when it done. But then here's Virtual World right here. That came in 2nd place. Wow, 2nd place out of 230 people. Oh, that's the other thing. 220 people. That's really insane. But it's Adventurer Virtual World. And like I said, there's nothing wrong with Therion Punk. It's definitely something you need to be aware of. It's definitely not like tier 3 terrible. It only topped because it's, there was 60 people at the regional. Like, no, that's a legit deck that you definitely need to be on the lookout for and watch out for as well. But it's also very unique as well. But this deck was piloted by Sean Atem Brown. 42 card main deck. One copy of the Otto Jaime Tutu. Oh, so normal summons itself without tributing? It's not terrible. Special summons itself back out. Okay, respect. 3 copies of Lulu. 3 copies of Lily. I've never seen this card. I've never seen anybody run this card. Usually this card. There's another level 3 that special summons itself, adds a card in the graveyard during end phase. That's kind of usually ran in here. I'm not sure where that card's at. Do they just normal summon this card? I think they just normal summon this card. But anyway, 3 copies of Lao, 1 copy of Nian Nian, because it's relatively free. 2 copies of Water Enchantress, 3 copies of Gamma, 1 copy of Driver for the Gamma, 1 copy of, like I've mentioned 3 or 4 times now, of Archlord Christia. Hey, it says neither player can special summon monsters. It's pretty solid. Not like amazing to shut down our own cards, but obviously this is the type of scenario where we drop this card. Our opponent, there's no way our opponent sees this card coming. No way. We make a relatively solid full board. And we there are a lot of situations and game states, especially with the adventurer package, where we can make our full turn boards of like our Baron de Fleurs or our Shen Shen Crystal Wing Chuchi, and then we just normal summon Archlord Christia, and our opponent's like, wait, what? So it's interesting, because I obviously there's no fairies in this deck, so there's no one to really say it. And I think that's also what we're seeing with Spell Canceller in here as well, right? So Spell Canceller says spell cards and their effects cannot be activated, negate all spells on the field, right? And yeah, you have the equip play spell, you have the continuous spell, but for the most part, there's not really a whole lot of spells. It's another situation where, yeah, there's running a lot of spells, but obviously we're summoning the Spell Canceller out to stop our opponent from having fun, right? Not like just us, right? Because there's no way, and this probably is why this deck did so well. No way you could read one of these 2 cards are just in this deck. They're just doing virtual world things, and then they just drop a Spell Canceller. Like, no way. 3 copies of Pride of Prosperity, 2 Emergency Teleport, because it is virtual world, and for the Gammas as well. 1 copy of Foolish, 1 copy of Foolish Burial Goods for the Gling Long. As well as, I mean, they all have all of the, like, this has a graveyard effect, this has a graveyard effect as well, but this is your main searcher, right? So that's the main thing. 3 Dark Ruler No More, 1 Called By, Double Right, 1 Fateful Adventure, just the adventure package, you know how it is. And then 3 copies of Quan Lun, and then double Glinglong, 1 double Chuchi, and of course the 1 of Zound Wound. So I like this deck, really interesting deck profile. I love to see the innovation. We saw the innovation in the last deck. With the Theron Punk deck, seeing more innovation here with the Archlord Christias and the Spell Cancelers, and that ran in the Virtual World deck with Adventure in it as well. Just absolutely insane. This is insane deck. The more I think about it, the crazier it gets. It's like one of those weird pictures. I don't know if you've ever seen them, where it looks like someone's got 3 arms, and then you look, and they also have a 3rd leg, and then they look, and they have a finger coming out their forehead. It's like that. Like the more you look at it, the crazier this deck kind of gets. But in the best way. I mean that in the best way possible, because this is obviously a fantastic deck. And I love the innovation. I love the innovation on Virtual World, if I'm being honest. But 1 copy of the Virtual World Rank 6, 1 copy of Beatrice, 1 copy of Utopia Beyond, 1 copy of Zeus, 1 copy of Ptolemy M7, 1 copy of the Geomathematic Final Sigma. I love the Dawn Dragster. Omni Negation that a lot of people forget exists, and it's a generic level 7. Obviously, Crystal Ring to Zulkin, Barons, Shen Shen, we talked about him earlier, Double Baron, right? Because we are running the adventure package, so we can get some interesting levels on here. It's not just per Virtual World, we can really only make 6s and 9s, we could do some actually interesting things. 1 Shen Shen, Coral Dragon, Stardust, pretty typical, and then the level 6 Virtual World Synchro Monster. In the side deck, what in the world? Like I said, like the closer you look, the more you look, the wilder it gets in the best way possible. 1 copy of Lava Golem, 1 Scattered Shot, triple Ghost Sisters. So these are just 4 cards for time. 1 copy of Yujo Friendship. 1 copy of Unity. I think 3 Book of Eclipse. 3 copies of Judgment of the Pharaoh. Pay half your life points. Select and activate an appropriate. I've read this before, but I gotta read it. I don't remember what it does. If Yojo Friendship is in your graveyard until the end of this turn, your opponent cannot normal, set, flip, or special summon monsters or activate their effects. If Unity is in the graveyard. Wait, what? Interesting. If Unity is in the graveyard, by the way, it just negates. So basically, going first after we've sided, we put these 7 cards in. We go Yujo Friendship. Activate Unity. Yujo Friendship. We have Unity. So life points become half. Which would just be, because it's the combined life points, so it'd actually just be both 8,000. We play Unity, right? And our opponent's like, what is going on? We're doing all this virtual world stuff. We play Unity. We drop Archlord Christia on top of our Baron Chuchi with 2 banished virtual world cards. We play Trap Trick. And then we play Judgment. We search Judgment of the Pharaoh. And our opponent can't play. I will be watching this video after this video. I gotta know the exact reason why the goo is the way that it is. Because this is, when we talk about the goo, this is what you're referring to. This is let's keep it going. Let's give a round of applause. But the interesting thing too is about Virtual World in this state. Virtual World could do a lot with a little. So the Kashtira taking up zones, it's not that big of an issue. Also, this card's pretty solid. Obviously the zones are still taken, but you can negate it so they can't take more zones, right? And then we also got the Book of Eclipses in the sides. Chuchi can pop. This is actually, Virtual World's a really solid deck. Just because it's no longer VFD Turbo doesn't mean it's bad now, right? So shout out to that. I've never clapped in one of these videos before, but I felt like I had to there. But let's take a look at YCS Vegas. Let's get serious now, okay? That's enough of that. Let's get serious now. I can't click on any of these. Kashtira won the event. The Kashtira won the entire event. There are no Kashtira deck profiles. And so Kashtira won the entire event. So we're just going to take a look at this branded deck profile. I'm actually going to look at both of them because they were on the same team and see if there were any differences. Usually, teammates running the same deck, running the same archetype, are also just running the same deck. Just so it's easier. Because it's like, yes, you could argue that play styles are different, so you should run different decks. But essentially, this deck is like an example of the best cards both of our minds could come up with. So they are the exact same deck, which, like I said, is pretty standard for a team, right? So this one, these two were piloted by Charlie Ray Funch and John Wilkin. Shout out to Ryan being different. Respect you, Ryan, for playing Labyrinth, but also give respect. Obviously, second place at a Team YCS is absolutely insane. Just team tournaments just last a little bit longer, so it's just pretty crazy. But 1 Despian Tragedy, 1 Adlib, 1 McCurrier, 3 Aliber, double Blazing Cardia, the Virtuous, double fall. I don't know why that's so hard for me to say. Double Fallen of Allbass, 1 Springen's Kit, 1 Alabion. What are you doing in here? 1 Bystial Soaring Rear, 1 Bystial Lubellion, triple Ash, double Nibiru, the ultimate wizard in terms of attack and defense, 1 Gold Sark, 1 Foolish, 1 Called by, triple branded Fusion, which is an absolutely fantastic card still. Triple branded Opening, which is also a really good card. Branded Loss, which we can finally see here more of, because it's just a really good card. 1 branded in red, triple Fusion Deployment, which is a really solid card. A lot of people are playing this just to kind of help get some materials out onto the board. Triple Book of Eclipse, 1 branded Retribution, and 1 branded Expulsion. For the extra deck, 1 copy of the Dusk Dragon, 1 copy of Despion Proskinion, 1 copy of Dragos Palia, 1 copy of the new Striking Dragon, double Masquerade Ice Blade Dragon. You know, if you run the Starlight Rare, it's actually unaffected by your opponent's card effects. That's not true. 1 Albion the Branded Dragon. 1 Lubellion the Searing Dragon, 1 copy of Sprind the Iron Dash Dragon, 1 copy of Brigand the Glory Dragon, 1 copy of Guardian Chimera, and double Dragoon because he only needs Dragon Effect Monster. And guess what Fallen of Albas is? That's insane. Imagine your opponent summoning this card, discarding a card, and fusion summoning the Dark Magician. And fusion summoning using the Dark Magician to make Dragoon. And Dragoon's a really solid card, by the way. Can't be destroyed by card effects. Neither player can target this card with card effects. During your main phase, you can destroy a bunch of opponent controls to inflict damage. Like, it is a really good card. If you haven't read it in a while, it's pretty solid. Interestingly enough, these decks are running Elemental Hero Aqua Neos. I actually watched a little bit of the YCS Vegas, so I saw this combo take place where they'll fusion deployment, revealing this card to special summon the Aqua Dolphin, pitching a card, getting rid of our Ash Blossom, our opponent's Ash Blossom, which is so crazy against our branded fusion. I don't know what this card is though. I've run Gimmick Puppets too, and I actually just don't know. I don't know what this card's doing. You can special summon this card for your hand by tributing 1 face-up Xyz monster you control. I think... I don't know. Because if this card is special summoned, you cannot special summon any monsters for the rest of the turn except Gimmick Puppet monsters. And most of the Gimmick Puppet monsters say that, which is why you don't ever see them randomly in decks. Interesting. We went too far. Triple Contact C, double Super Poly, 3 Crossout Designator, once again for the Ashes. And then Nibiru's are pretty solid too. 3 copies of Econ and 1 Dimensional Barrier. Maybe it's... I don't know. But let me know what you guys think. What are some of the interesting things you saw with these decks? A lot of interesting decks, which is really cool. It lets me know, like, yeah, the format's a little obnoxious, but it's still in a spot where we can see innovation like Theron Punk, like that Virtual World Adventure deck we just saw, and even like that last branded deck we just saw. Let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. Do you like this format? Do you hate it? Let me know. Make sure you guys click that like button, show your support for the channel, subscribe for more content, but most importantly of all, have a good day.